The UK now officially has a new Prime Minister. Liz Truss has been appointed to the job by the Queen and now must get on with the job of forming a government. It is a tricky new job at a tricky time for the UK, with Liz Truss inheriting a raft of difficult issues which demand swift answers. Well, with me now is Dr. Alice Lilly, Senior Researcher at the Institute for Government. Alice, great to have you with us. So now the reshuffle begins. Do you think Liz Truss will reward people who were more to the right of her party, who supported her, or perhaps people who are more suited to the job? And of course, I'm not saying there that the two are mutually exclusive, but what do you make of it?
We've certainly seen an awful lot of briefing over the weekend in an unusual amount of detail about who Liz Truss is going to appoint to her cabinet. If that briefing is borne out, it certainly suggests that a lot of those who've been quite loyal to Liz Truss are likely to be rewarded with cabinet positions. But of course, there's a real balancing act for the new Prime Minister there. She wants people who, of course, have been loyal to her, but, by getting rid of a lot of potential ministers who are in place at the moment and putting them on the back benches, there's a real risk that they could end up proving to be quite tricky for her to manage. So it's going to be quite a delicate balancing act.
So a balancing act at a very difficult time. She's got a huge raft of issues to tackle. I mean, I could list them all. I'll just go into some of them. Cost of living crisis, energy crisis, NHS crisis, Brexit issues. At the same time before, she said during her campaign, quote, "I will cut taxes from day one." Well, this is day one. So which issue is she going to touch first?
We're not immediately sure. Certainly the issue around tax cuts and more broadly around the cost of living crisis, of which the energy cost is a kind of key component, that looks as though that is going to be the major thing. It's certainly what's dominating the headlines here in the UK. And Liz Truss said at the weekend that she would expect to bring forward a package of measures within her first week as Prime Minister. Once Liz Truss has given her first statement as PM and once she's gone to the House of Commons for the first time tomorrow as Prime Minister, we should have a much better idea of what her priority is going to be. But the likelihood is, at least in the coming weeks, it's going to be very difficult for her to focus on anything else.
There has been talk about the possibility of a price cap freeze when it comes to the energy crisis in the UK right now. The big question is, how would the UK government pay for it? Are we any clearer of understanding whether it could come to pass and whether this is something that Liz Truss would say eventually, yes, the government could pay for this?
I think certainly over the summer, while this leadership contest has been going on and while the sort of energy crisis has really developed, there's been a lack of detail about actually what any new government has been going to do. We've heard both Liz Truss and her other contender for the leadership, Rishi Sunak, sort of talk about various different things at different points, but we're yet to see any real detail. Now that Liz Truss is actually Prime Minister, she has full access to all the levers of government, to the civil service, to all the data and information that's in government. You would expect to see that a package will be drawn up quite quickly, but we are still waiting the details.